Hey there, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. There's about $216 million that's going to be used for middle mile and last mile broadband infrastructure in 5 states. 2 programs that were announced last week. Be right back with the details. Thanks for joining me, Rick Husey here with Broadband Deployment News. So I want to take a look at this. These were 2 stories that came out last week that will impact broadband services in these 5 states faster than we'll see from the BEAD program, because these are both from programs that are currently releasing funds, and one of which has now released the last amount of money that they'll be releasing. So first here we have Treasury Department announcing funds to connect 20,000 homes in Oklahoma. This is, you see here, today U.S. Department of Treasury announced approval of $167.7 million for high-speed internet projects in Oklahoma under the American Rescue Plan's Capital Project Fund. So that's through ARPA, the CPF, or Capital Projects Fund, which the state estimates will connect approximately 20,000 homes and businesses to affordable high-speed internet. So that's about, I think it's $8,300 when I looked at it, about $8,300 per location. This is 20,000 homes and businesses that will not need to be using funds from BEAD. So every time we see one of these, I like to point that out. It's kind of obvious at this point, but it's important because a lot of states are looking at the funds they have that are coming through BEAD, and they're wondering if they're going to be able to reach everybody with that. But as we see these other programs deliver funds, that is helping, and it gets this money, like I mentioned, it gets this money out quicker. So those BEAD funds probably will not hit until springtime, sometime of next year, maybe a little bit earlier for some of these states that are on the ball. But that money's going to be a while. But these funds are going to be allocated much faster. So that's good news. CPF provides a total of $10 billion to states, territories, freely associated states, and tribal governments to fund critical capital projects that enable work, education, and health monitoring. And a lot of states have used that specifically for broadband in the Capital Projects Fund. And it says here, in addition to the $10 billion provided by CPF, many governments are putting a portion of their state and local fiscal recovery funds, or SLFRF, toward meeting the Biden-Harris administration's goal of connecting every American household to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet. And that SLFRF program was $350 million. So, excuse me, billion, not million, $350 billion. So a lot of money was also, or has been allocated through that. So here, just alone, from this, Oklahoma is getting almost $168 million through that. Mentions the state's allocation will fund the Oklahoma Broadband Infrastructure Grants Program, OBIG. I love some of the acronyms. A competitive grant program designed to reduce the financial barriers for internet service providers to build out broadband infrastructure in areas of the state where infrastructure investment has historically been cost prohibitive due to population density and geographic constraints. And that basically is the problem in a nutshell, and why we have these programs, why we have the BEAD program, because to get broadband to all of these places, especially the fiber, it's costly, and it's very costly if, depending on how many people you've got in an area, how far apart they are, how remote a place is, the kind of geography you've got, that all makes it very difficult. And it's been a moving target because we put funds toward this before, but when we put funds toward this before, fiber was, there wasn't much fiber out there, and it was very, very expensive. So we had DSL in places, and we were funding DSL, and then the definition for broadband increased. So suddenly all these places that we funded with DSL suddenly didn't have broadband anymore. So we're trying to rectify that, hopefully here, finally, by putting in what's called future-proof fiber technology to be able to continue to increase speeds, to 1 gig, 10 gig, it's already 1 gig in lots of places, GPON, 10 gig, 25 gig, 50 gig, 100 gig, all over the same piece of fiber with maybe some technology, hardware changes on the ends, but this will certainly help. As reported by Oklahoma, estimates show that investments made using the Capital Projects Fund will serve about 13% of locations still lacking high-speed internet access in the state. So again, that's 13% of locations that are now not going to have to be served by BEAD funding. So that will be taken off of the map. The plan approved by the Treasury Department today represents 100% of the state's total allocation under the CPF. So that's all of the money that Oklahoma is going to get. I'm not sure many states have anything left coming from this or from the state and local fiscal recovery fund program. Hopefully there's more that has not been allocated that, again, will help with limiting the amount of BEAD funding that the state will need. So this is all connecting end user, homes and businesses. So last mile access. So these are places where you've got infrastructure nearby, and they're going to be connecting up last mile where, it was cost prohibitive maybe to run fiber through all of these particular neighborhoods, that kind of thing. Then we've got something from the Middle Mile program. So I see here Biden-Harris administration awards nearly $50 million to expand and strengthen regional and national internet networks. The NTIA announced nearly $50 million into 4 organizations to expand middle mile high-speed internet infrastructure in New Hampshire, Tennessee, Virginia, and Wyoming. Under the Internet for All initiative, the Enabling Middle Mile Broadband Infrastructure Program invests in projects that build regional networks that connect to national internet networks. So this is under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It's the Middle Mile Broadband Grant Program. It was $1 billion. So the IIJA is what funded BEAD as well as this program. Middle Mile Internet infrastructure carries large amounts of data over long distances, increases capacity to local networks, boosts network resiliency, lowers the cost of bringing high-speed internet service to unconnected households, and helps connect unserved regions to the internet backbone. So that's really what this is aimed at. So this is not connecting up the last mile subscriber, but it helps connecting up unserved subscribers because they may be in a very remote area, and to get broadband to them, you have to have a middle mile network that's going to connect that area to other areas and to the overall internet backbone. So that's a very costly thing in some states. Alaska, for example, is probably going to have to use a lot of their BEAD funding for middle mile infrastructure. They've got fewer people living in such a big state than a smaller state like New Hampshire, which has got, I think, almost the same amount of people as Alaska. I can't remember the difference there, but it was very close. So you've got a very small state where you don't have a lot of middle mile infrastructure needs, and you've got a huge state where you've got lots of remote areas, lots of people, few and far between. Lots of people still because it's a big state, but few and far between there. So middle mile infrastructure is going to be more important in some states than others. So this will help. With these grants, all funding for grant awards from the Middle Mile program have been awarded to 36 organizations in 40 states and territories. No additional awards will be announced. So again, this was about $1 billion that were to cover this plus administration costs. And now that's now gone. So states will need, any states that have not gotten their middle mile funding through this will have to use other funding sources, including they can use funding from BEAD for middle mile if that's a big need for them. Middle mile networks are the state's interstate highways of the internet, carrying large amounts of data at high speeds to connect entire communities, said Assistant Secretary of Commerce Alan Davidson. These final awards complete the Biden administration's nearly $1 billion investment in regional internet networks that will help us bring affordable, reliable, high-speed internet connection to everyone in America. So then you see here some details. So these projects cover 27 counties across 4 states, 18.5 miles of new fiber that will pass within 1,000 feet of 164 community anchor institutions. That's important because community anchor institutions are one of the things that they want to connect through BEAD dollars, but it's the last priority. But if you can get that middle mile infrastructure that close, then it's a little bit easier, obviously, for service providers in that area to then do the final connection. Fiber is the primary technology, which is good to know. Surprised it's not the only technology, but there could be some wireless backhaul or some things to get to some other areas where that's needed. And then $23 million of outside matching funds come through this. So it's not just the close to $50 million, but 75, almost 75 million that's going towards this. Over 260 applications were submitted for this program, totaling $7.47 billion in funding requests. So you can see there was a lot of demand for it. Over 7 times the amount of money that was in there, lots of applications. But they've now completed that program. So again, good news for those that are looking specifically for broadband improvements in those states. Oh, wait a minute, I was going to go back and take a look at a few details there. I forgot to do that. So let me scroll down here on this one. So here are the states. So we got New Hampshire, Tennessee, Virginia, and Wyoming. And take a quick look. So you see here, New Hampshire, County of Grafton as the winner there. It's almost $12 million. That will develop the 222-mile County of Grafton middle mile backbone through population centers. New fiber optic to close the gaps. So there's some additional information there. By the way, I linked to these two pages that I'm looking at in the video description if you want to check that out. Tennessee, that's going to Blue Ridge Advisory Services Group. Not sure who that is, but $20.3 million is going to them. Built over 4 years, the proposed route will cover 155 miles of new fiber cable that significantly improves existing Scott County telephone cooperative network architecture by creating 4 new rings, closes several unprotected laterals, and spans across unserved areas and interconnects via network interface with East Kentucky networks. So that may be, this Blue Ridge Advisory Service may be associated with Scott County Telephone. And we've got Virginia, Mid-Atlantic Broadband Communities Corporation. The applicant plans to construct approximately 130 miles of new fiber to enable open access middle mile connectivity and enhance grant funds for local ISPs and existing carriers. And I'm thinking maybe all of these needed to be open access, where maybe that's not the case. I can't recall. I know there's some requirements in something somewhere where I saw that, but open access middle mile network. And I think it is, if I remember, it is, I think, in this program where if you're going to build this middle mile network, you need to open it up to others that it can ride that as well. So it can't just be your own middle mile network that you're going to use for your own last mile connections, for example. It needs to be open up to others. So that's for, who is that? That is Virginia. Then we've got, here it is, Wyoming. In Wyoming, we've got Visionary Communications, LLC, $1.2 million. It's an 11.5-mile project that will bring critical fiber backhaul to the main tower site feeding Oriva Hills. So this is feeding a fiber site, or not fiber, excuse me, a fixed wireless site, substantially increasing the capacity available, which addresses the primary limitation of broadband availability and will be available for all last mile providers to utilize. So again, open access for that middle mile network, feeding a feeding a fixed wireless connection. So Virginia, we looked at that. Wyoming, Tennessee, was that it? And we looked at, the other one was New Hampshire. Yeah, we looked at those. So there you go. All right. So again, that's great news for those states, both improving middle mile infrastructure, which will improve last mile broadband connectivity in those areas, as well as the Oklahoma getting the last mile funds, almost $168 million for them. That again takes 20,000 locations off the map. That's a big deal. Thanks for joining me. If this was interesting or helpful, if you give me a like on the video, I'd appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button and then click the bell to be notified when I'm live. See you next time. Bye-bye.